Hey folks, your
Absolute Packer podcast initiating in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And hello, Absolute Packer podcast fans. Welcome to episode 18 of the Absolute Packer podcast, where we recap the Packers versus Vikings. And all I can say is the season will mercifully be over soon. So, Elliot, what's up?
The end. That's it.
Yep.
Last time I think we had a 50-minute plus episode. I think we could be done in 5 minutes with this.
Yep. It could just basically be fart noises for 5 minutes and maybe we'd be good.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's such a bummer, but it's hard to be a Packer fan right now.
Yeah. You know, kind of high level going into this game, I didn't think they had a chance to win. I thought they were going to get blown out. Now, 16-0. I wouldn't call it a blowout. It felt more like 38-0, but I thought they'd put up a point. That I didn't see getting shut out coming. But all in all, the end result didn't surprise me too much. And
well, whether it's 16-0 or 19-3, it's the spread that really matters. And I mean,
there's no gambling in football.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't care about spreads and all this kinds of things, injury reports.
Right. A point is, winning by 1 point is all that really matters,
yeah.
Right? But But I mean, I think to what you're saying, defensively, like 16 points wouldn't have won very many games last week.
Nope.
On the Vikings side, so they're what was the term you used? Like a paper champion or something?
Yeah, you never heard that term? Yeah, where they
is that what you said? Paper champion?
Yeah, and that's what I wrote that in the notes. That's like anything. I mean, any team or any player, when you're talking about something, they look good on paper, but when you actually play a game, that's So, I guess we'll pop right into it. But so this was a really cold game. 9 degrees, I think, was either the high or was the temperature at kickoff. And, I only bring up, obviously it's going to be cold in Green Bay, in December, although truth be told, it's a little colder than normal, which is weird to say, but we live in Wisconsin. But the reason I bring that up is this is the first, I'll use air quotes, cold weather game that Brett Hundley had played in. So it was, at least got a chance to see what he could do when it gets to actual Green Bay football weather. And the answer was not much.
Yeah, it was a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the stats with him passing the ball, and this is on the home and on the road, he's done better on the road, which is odd. But if you look at the stats collectively, his average yards per attempt on passes and his average yards per completion is so low, it's unbelievable to see. Actually, when I see some of these, he's averaging like 3 yards per attempt, which is like half the league average. It's just, and part of me too is going, if he's a graduate of the McCarthy QB school, what kind of school is this?
Time to take away the school's funding.
Yeah, how high is the bar? I'd like to see the curriculum that they're teaching there. Maybe they're using Nerf footballs in a climate controlled environment, because geez Louise, and I'll give McCarthy credit. He's a stubborn SOB, and he's sticking with Hundley and he believes in Hundley. But I think it's patently obvious after 9 games now, that it's either 8 or 9, that we know what Hundley is, and it's not much.
So, though, when Rodgers came back last week,
yep,
he lost, and he had a number of interceptions.
He had 3.
And so I don't feel like it's just a quarterback that the suckage is happening.
No, you're right.
I don't know that anybody. I don't think you could put, outside of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. I think you put anybody in there, they'd look almost as bad as Hundley.
I don't know about that. The guy. Here's where I'm kind of. It's further down the list. But
I'm not saying he's top 5. That's an exaggeration. But he was kind of thrown in the middle of the season.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Literally.
And in the beginning of the season, and what happened here was, if you talk about how the roster is constructed, and the draft and development, all those things, the Packers never bring in a veteran veteran quarterback. They draft and they groom, and then they bring in guys like, third stringers like Joe Callahan, which, sounds like the Tommy Boy, auto part thing or whatever, but Callahan Auto Parts. That's what always reminds me of when I hear it. But, so they don't bring in veterans that have any experience. I mean, what you saw with Hundley this whole season was it was on the job training. And for a team, and again, this is laughable now, but for a team that quote unquote had Super Bowl aspirations, you can't have on the job training with a guy who's never started a game on a team that's supposed to get to the Super Bowl. Now, again, in hindsight, this team wasn't going to the Super Bowl. They were going to the toilet bowl, but that's part of the issue too, is, Hundley had never seen real game experience. So it was trial by fire, and he was learning on the job. And so it was basically, from that respect, it was a wasted season. It's not Hundley's fault. Hundley was put in a bad spot. It's the fault of McCarthy, and it's the fault of Ted Thompson. Where I'm kind of going with all this, though, is, I tend to think, gun to my head, Hundley's going to be the backup next year. I don't think he should be. I think he should be a third string quarterback. At the beginning of the year, they were talking about dreams of, the biggest problem we're going to have with Hundley is, how high of a draft pick are we going to get when we trade him? Well, you're not going to get shit for him now. They're not going to trade him for anything. So, and they keep their draft picks, and they got all this time invested in them, yada, yada, yada. So I think he's going to be the second stringer. I mean, and maybe they'll bring in a veteran quarterback as a third stringer or something, but I mean, and I feel bad for Hundley because he is who he is. Part of it's just he's not all that good, but it's also, he was a 5th round pick. And they knew he was more of a read option type guy, and he wasn't a pocket passer. I mean, his deep ball throwing, God, every time he dropped back and threw the ball over 15 yards, I was like,
it wasn't going anywhere.
I mean, he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, as I like to say. I mean, he was so far off with some of these things. He can't throw past 15 yards. That's the note I made here. It's just, forget it. It's just, who knows where the hell it's going to go. And then anytime he does make a nice throw, I'm already skipping all over the list. You got guys like Trevor Davis that watch the ball go over his shoulder and hit the ground in front of him and don't even bother to lift a finger up to try and touch the ball.
Right.
Ugh, maddening.
Right. So it makes a below average quarterback look just bottom of the league.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too, since we're talking about, Hundley and some of his weaknesses, just who he is, Devontae Adams didn't start. He's lacking. I mean, they only had like 2 tight ends on the whole roster. Kendricks is just as bad as Mark Bennett. Those 2 tight ends, you might as well have, signed cardboard cutouts and put them in uniforms. Yeah. They were just worthless, and so he doesn't have a lot of options, to throw to. Devontae is his big guy, and that's not going to do it. So Jordy's out there. He's slow and losing his step, and
which is just,
they did have that guy though. I'm already forgetting his name, but he was, they've been talking about him, Mark something or another, or maybe I'm way off, but he was, that 6'6" receiver that's been on the practice squad. 1 year of, football in college. He was a basketball player. Ted loves to draft guys who play different sports and then convert. It's very odd. It's like, next year we're going to get a guy who goes, okay, this guy was a striker on an MLS team, but we're going to convert him to a free safety. It's just odd, But anyway, this guy, I can't. And again, his name has escaped me. I apologize. It's kind of shame on me for not knowing it. But he had a great catch in the game. But then he also, he dropped what should have been a pretty good touchdown. And the guy looked very athletic, but that's who Hundley's throwing to, though. A basketball player who's masquerading as a football player. So, and there were a ton of drops. I can't believe I didn't note that in here. I counted 7 dropped passes. 7.
Wow.
I mean, so they weren't doing him any favors by any means, but I don't know.
Are you talking about Clark?
Yes. Michael Clark. Yeah. I said Mark. I was way off. Samsonite. I was way off. You remember that from Dumb and Dumber?
Forget it.
Yeah. God. But yeah, I mean, he looked like an athletic freak. He's like I said, he's 6'6", so he's almost like a tight end, but he's a receiver. But again, he's so raw, and I get why they, there's not much to play for this season, but it's not helping Hundley because Hundley's not that good. This guy's struggling. I mean, it's kind of an untenable situation.
Yep. I got nothing. Nothing beyond that.
Yeah. And I mean, I did make a note here too. The cold weather, field conditions were kind of goofy. The Packers were sliding all over the place. I noticed that. The Vikings didn't seem to be that much, but the Packers were. But in general, you know, when you have when it's a really cold game in general, and
it's hard to throw it.
It's harder to throw it, obviously. That's going to help us, and it's going to hurt the Vikings, you know. So the Vikings are built for a dome because that's where they play. But I don't see them really going that far in the playoffs just because, number one, they're not going to have home field throughout. They may get a bye, but if you get them outside, like, say, with Philadelphia, even with a backup quarterback, they have a really good – I mean, I just don't see them doing a whole lot. Keenum didn't – you know, he's okay, but you know, I call them kind of a paper champion. They got some good stuff, but they have a good defense, no doubt. But, you know, they didn't impress me all that much.
Hey, shutting anybody out that's an impressive accomplishment, you know, because you hit a point in the game where, okay, we won. We can give up some points, right? Yeah. They didn't give up anything.
And I mean, we really shouldn't have been shut out because we were driving. Hundley throws that awful pick to Harrison Smith. And I mean, that would have been a field goal at least. And he threw that ball so late. If he threw it on time, I think it probably would have been a touchdown to Kendricks. But part of me was going, after it happened, I'm going, why are you throwing to Kendricks? That guy's got, you know, 2x4s for hands, you know? But
yeah.
No,
I mean, there's a lot of things that probably should have been a little different there, but we weren't going to win.
I mean, I used to, no doubt. If we would have won, that would have been crazy. It wouldn't have meant anything, obviously, but still.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm noticing you're highlighting, you know, this is one thing I noticed just about the roster construction between the two teams. You know, the Vikings I put here are the antithesis of how the Packers, they're the exact opposite. You know, they're bizarro Packers in Seinfeld terms. You know, they're built with a great defense, a second or third string quarterback who can, actually play football competently, and a good mix of young players, veterans, and free agents. I mean, all those three bullets are the opposite of what we have. I mean, we are top heavy beyond belief with Rodgers, and then
yeah. So no, it's true, and you know they got some guys with some experience. Mm-hmm. You know, they weren't just draft and develop, but they got a little lucky though. I mean, no doubt.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers went down. I think, you know, there's been a lot of, back and forth and extrapolating out. But, you know, my dad and my brother were actually talking about this where
if they didn't know they were going to do that well with their second and third string players.
No doubt. They didn't know Keenan. I didn't think Keenan was going to be that good.
No, nobody did.
But I mean, you still have to give the guy credit. He was, he's doing well with the Vikings. Obviously, he fits their offense.
Hell yeah.
I mean, he was a crummy backup quarterback everywhere else he was at. So credit where credit's due. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't blow me away by any means. Right. But if Aaron Rodgers didn't get hurt and there were no other, I'll call them significant injuries to key players, if you want to play the if, what, maybe, or whatever game, I think the Packers are exactly what the Vikings are.
Oh, we would have definitely held our own
12-3 or whatever.
You know what? So if we could redo the season and Aaron Rodgers didn't get hurt, then Devontae Adams wouldn't have probably had one of his 17 injuries that he's had, and I think that maybe this game would have mattered.
Oh, no doubt.
But we very well could or should have won it, and we would have been in the playoffs, and they would not.
Although I will say this, say the Packers, even with Rodgers coming back, say they squeaked out a win over the Panthers. I don't think they would have beat the Vikings at home. I still don't think even with Rodgers, I don't think they would have. I mean, I think there would have been a chance. It would have been a better chance, but I didn't think they'd win. He hasn't done very well against Mike Zimmer-led defense. Zimmer's a really good coach.
Yep. But 16 points is not that much.
No doubt.
So, I mean, it might have been tight. And the winner could have, gone to the playoffs, and the other one would have maybe gotten the wild card, right? But it would have been a very, 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 very different season.
I said, you could do that all day long, but
yep.
And in some weird way, part of me goes, okay, what are some positives that can come out of a crummy season? Number one, I mean, and this is it sucks to admit, but I think there's truth in it. The team got exposed, and I think it almost, had he not gone down, nothing's changing. If they squeaked in the playoffs and lost in the first round and he never got hurt, and even if they made it, Capers isn't going anywhere. And I mean, the way they do things isn't changing. And I think it allowed for all these warts to come out full, front and center. And hopefully that, in some respect, it'll change some things there. That's what I'm trying to think will happen there. But
well, people approach adversity differently, right? So, I mean, we can look at it as like, well, we were victims. The Packers were victims of
I'd
injuries.
love to know how Ted approaches adversity, but he never talks, so nobody has any idea. He hibernates, and then it is crazy. You won't hear from Ted for 9 months. He's the general manager of the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
And you won't hear him say a word from the end of training camp until basically the draft the next year. That's crazy. So as much as people would like to know what he's thinking, nobody knows.
Right.
Because he's in his bunker, or he's, he's scouting some long snapper at UW Random Lake or something.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, you know what? Hopefully he's doing some extra scouting, because this team needs some changes. Like top to bottom.
No doubt. Kind of getting a little off there, but it all is interplayed, and it all kind of plays off each other,
Yeah. So okay. I don't know if you're down to. Well, I mean, you didn't hit this one. Only was so bad that he broke NFL records for futility at home. That was very true. Like historically bad.
Yeah. It's a link in there that I'll just click on it. I don't have the exact, but basically, essentially, what it does. And most people knew this, but I'll just pour salt in the wound, because why the hell not?
Yeah.
Hundley didn't throw a touchdown pass during Green Bay's 16-0 defeat, keeping him without scoring a touchdown in 5 starts at Lambeau Field. According to ESPN stats and information, Hundley has thrown more passes at home without a touchdown, 162 passes, than any other quarterback during a single season in NFL history. That speaks for itself right there. There's nothing else that needs to be said. That's embarrassing. We're talking about backups. We're talking about that is bad. Just terrible. And again, I go back to like the McCarthy school. Is it the McCarthy? It's the McCarthy preschool. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're that bad, you can only get better, right?
Yeah. It's true.
It's hard to put a positive spin on this.
Yeah, I mean, this game, there were really no positive, and more guys got hurt. Did you see that? I mean, on the first play of the game, Jason Spriggs hurt his knee. Now, Spriggs hasn't played well, and actually came out today. It looked like he tore his ACL. I'm like, crap. They took him on a cart. Yeah. He actually dislocated his kneecap, which sounds horrible, but it won't even require surgery, and he'll be ready for all off-season stuff. So, if anything, it's good because he won't be out for a year, and he won't have to rehabilitate that, and they'll have some depth. But it wasn't like it was David Bakhtiari. It was Jason Spriggs. But first play of the damn game. It's like the injuries this year. Nothing else to say there.
Yeah, no, there really isn't.
And then my boy Trevor Davis. Ugh. So he's such a tease, and he's kind of a microcosm of some of these fringe players on the roster, and more so with what Mike does versus Mike McCarthy versus like Ted, And I don't know how many times I'm going to see this guy fair catch a punt inside the 10-yard line or even inside the 5-yard line. Yeah. I don't know if he's being coached. Apparently not, because he's done that at least half a dozen times. And these are peewee football type things. And then that pass that Hundley threw, if you watch this replay, he threw a beautiful pass.
Yeah.
And he basically ran, and the ball went over his shoulder, and he watched it go over his shoulder and hit the ground in front of him. Didn't put even a finger up. Now, was it a tough catch to make? He's a little bit. I mean, it was a tough ball. The angle is coming in and all that kind of stuff. But a guy who's a fringe player and, he's getting playing time, not on special teams, but as a receiver, and you do that. I mean, I said that's the kind of shit that Bill Belichick would cut your ass at halftime. You're gone.
Yeah.
But again, to the point of the roster construction, these draft picks are so cushy. They don't have to worry about losing or being pushed. Whereas a coach like that would literally cut your ass. They don't have to worry about anything.
I know.
and that's a problem in and of itself.
So, well, I mean, so success brings more success and failure brings more failure. And we don't have the culture of winning that it feels like we just had.
Yeah.
Like something
precipitous
flipped.
Fall. Ugh. Yeah.
And you know what? I feel like the Packers really haven't completely recovered since, Rodgers was injured last time. Like, I feel like
2013, like first collarbone.
Yeah.
There's something to that. They actually had Matt Flynn to lean on. They had to go out and scramble and get him, but they got him, and they did okay. They did better. They did better than what they're doing now.
Yeah.
But I think I mentioned this last podcast. I think the tipping point for the whole damn thing, the Ted Thompson, Mike McCarthy, Dom Capers, that whole kind of machine, if you will, regime. The beginning of the end was the Seattle NFC Championship game loss, where everything went wrong.
Oh yeah.
2014.
Oh yeah.
That was to me, if you look back 10 years from now, let's say, or even 5 years from now,
right,
we're going to look back and we're going to go, that was the beginning of the end.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was just terrible.
I think that was it. I think the team looked at McCarthy and looked at Ted and looked at everything, and and it really is pointing that way.
Yeah.
So,
anything else about that game? I guess you said poor Jordy Nelson. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, we continue to see. I mean, I love Jordy. Jordy, you don't win the Super Bowl without him. He's a very savvy player. He was never the fastest guy,
right?
But he's a really, great route runner. Probably one of the best sideline catchers in the history of the game. So credit where credit is due. But it's sad to watch a player fall off the map so quickly. And like we discussed before we came on here today, what normally happens in the NFL, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, you could say, is guys don't have a slow decline. Guys fall off a cliff like that.
Yep.
And that's kind of what we're seeing. And, obviously I think he was somewhat a product of Aaron Rodgers, not completely, but somewhat. I mean, they were like telepathic with their communication, but it's just sad to see, every player sees it. So it's not like we're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It just sucks that it's happening in a sucky season too,
Right.
But so Jordy may or may not be back. I think he will, but I think if he is, they're going to have to restructure his contract because he's not worth basically half of what he's making right now. Same with Cobb. So we'll see. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd still rather have Jordy over Cobb, but
I don't know. I really don't know. And the only reason I say that, and here's the only reason I say that, Cobb is still he's lost like half a step, but he's still got said step.
Yeah.
He can separate a little bit.
Yeah.
And actually, what's crazy about Cobb, I don't know if you knew this, he leads the NFL in yards after contact, what they call YAC.
Yeah.
He leads the NFL, and that's with Hundley and with Rodgers and all. I mean, that's pretty interesting. So there's something there, but it's
No, I mean, I always knew he was. I always knew he was good, but like he just doesn't get like. And I'm never astute enough to determine whether it's a case of defenses like just knowing that knowing some of those stats about Cobb and like blocking him extra, so like he's not getting the catches.
Sure,
but
I think a couple things. Cobb, even when he came out, I mean, I don't know if you remember his first game in his career. That was the opening game after the Super Bowl. And against the New Orleans Saints, and it was, Sunday Night Football, and the first game of the season, and he caught a touchdown pass from Rodgers, and he had that punt return for a touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
So he had like a huge coming out party in his first game.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they first drafted him, they thought he's going to be like, remember Percy Harvin for the Vikings?
Sure.
And then he went to Seattle. Sure. A lot of people said he's Percy Harvin. And here's the thing that Percy Harvin had that Cobb doesn't: breakaway speed. Cobb is quick. He's savvy. He's athletic, but you put those guys in a 40 time and Harvin's going to blow by him,
Yeah.
He had incredible breakaway speed. Cobb was, I hate to say this, but it's kind of true. He was kind of like a poor man's Percy Harvin. Yeah. And that sounds bad, but there's only one Percy Harvin too.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, that was a great game. I remember watching that. Now we can reminisce about the good times.
Yeah, I was just thinking, maybe we should watch that game instead.
Yeah, next week we'll come on. We'll go, the Packers, that they went 15-1, and we'll recap all the wins that year, and we'll just turn back the clock. So that's really all I got for that game. I mean, mercifully, the season will come to the end after Detroit, and then we grab the popcorn and sit back and watch what the hell happens in the offseason. But
Yeah.
So on to JS comments.
You picked out some great ones.
Yeah, there weren't many, but these ones are good.
No,
so here we go.
These are great.
Busting right into it. So first one, quote, the Packers front office, and in parentheses, and I mean everyone, has become fat, dumb, and lazy. It's time to give all of 1265 Lombardi Avenue an enema and start over from scratch. And scratch is misspelled. It's best part.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, anytime you have enema and fat, dumb, and lazy in the same
and scratch spelled wrong. I mean, you know, it's the whole package.
It's a winner.
Yeah.
So there's some truth in that one. There's a few that are actually having some truth in there.
You know, so that's the painful thing about all these, right? Like we can like they can be hyperbolic, they can be just bad grammar, but like we're like everyone is frustrated.
I know. When there's more truth in JS comments than other things.
I mean, I felt that way the last few weeks. You know, like. No, we all feel the way, and we don't know, like we have no say in the matter, of course, but like we don't know what is gonna happen, and we really like even if we think we know what should happen, we're pretty sure it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Anyway, what's the next one?
I love this next one, and this is just I don't know why I laughed out loud when I first read it. So, quote: the tube hill is cool and looked fun. I would like to see it bigger, but it's just a start.
I'm pretty sure it's not a start. I'm pretty sure it's done.
Yeah, they're not going to expand on that thing. Oh my God.
It's made out of concrete and glass. They're not going to expand it.
Now you've been out by Titletown. Have you been on that?
No.
Okay. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I got a daughter. Looks like fun.
No, I know. Yeah.
Although, you know, I actually made a joke on speaking of that whole Titletown and the sled hill in particular.
Yeah.
There was somebody on Twitter made a comment. They said, you know, what needs to happen and you know, how are we going to figure out what happens in the off season with Ted and Mike? And I said, you know what you should do? You should have them do a race down the hill, the tube hill.
Oh my God.
And whoever loses gets canned.
You know what? There'd be more initiative for that than all season.
No doubt. Because I could just see Ted flying down on that tube with his mouth agape catching flies. You know, it's just, oh, geez.
The mouth gaping shot, that'll never get old.
Oh, God.
I'm going to use that over and over for.
And it's like the last 4 times they've put him on national TV when they go, oh, here's a general manager. He looks like he escaped from the home and doesn't know where he is.
He totally does.
It's just such bad optics, you know?
Like one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Like this is the man who is in charge of, you know, one of the most precious sports brands in the world.
Yeah.
So, anywho.
Oh, you know what? So one thing we didn't talk about was the Aaron Rodgers IR thing.
Oh yeah, good Lord, that's a good point. Well, we can do it now. Let's do it.
So, like, okay, so I don't understand.
I can fill you in on it.
I mean, I know what happened, but I'm still not really sure, like, why it's a thing and like what actually has to happen now. Sure.
I'll give you the gist of it. So obviously, Rodgers was on IR to begin with the collarbone thing, and when you do that. You're allowed to throughout the season. You can designate certain people, you know, IR with designation to return, as they call it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they were hoping for him to come back, and obviously he did. So he came back for one game, and you know they didn't win the game, and you know, so when it was over, they put him back on IR. And what injured reserve? There's almost like, you know, integrity of the game type stuff. Do teams put players on injured reserve later in the season due to what I'll call injuries that they could potentially play through? Yes, it does happen. I mean, that happens with all sorts of teams.
Yeah.
So not everything in context is the same, but the reason I think there was some outcry, and that is, you know, they didn't even say, they put him on injured reserve, but they didn't say what the injury was.
Right.
I think the only thing I heard was general soreness. I heard that in passing.
Okay.
So
okay.
Again, but what kind of came out after the fact is, I mean, so anytime you put a player on injured reserve, you have to check with the league and do your diligence to say, here's what we plan on doing. You know, here's how we're going to do it. And it has to be approved for the league to allow it. So that, you know, that's what the Packers obviously did. And, you know, I did see somebody post something about this on Facebook too, where they said, oh, it's interesting. And, you know, the people were talking about this. And, I don't know anything past that. I'm not exactly sure. So it's like the spirit of the game type thing. I mean, did on the surface, did it appear like they put him on IR because the season was over and they didn't want to expose him to worthless games, meaningless games? Yeah. That's what it looked like. But for all we know, he came back and he was 80. And I tend to think he came back and he was less than 100% for the Carolina game.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
Probably 80% at best.
Yeah.
Maybe he did have another injury. I haven't seen the exact details. But anyway, so I made this comment, though. I said, even if there was anything surrounding that, if Ted Thompson, who always has his mouth agape and looks like he escaped from the home, as I said,
right.
If he's dumb enough to expose the best player in the league, that I should preface this actually. If you put somebody on IR and you're not supposed to,
right.
There's some kind of rule, NFL rule that says he has to be released.
Right.
He's released from his contract and he gets put on weight. And the worst team in the league, Browns, have first rights to claim him. So he would be a Brown. So that's what would have happened, right? So I made this comment. I said, if Ted Thompson is dumb enough to expose the best player in the league to waivers, and this is exactly what I said. I said he should go into his office, set himself on fire, and close the door so that nobody can go in and save him. So, again, it's kind of a much ado about nothing. But what I think will happen is in the off season, I could see some kind of tweaking to the rule or more explanation or some kind of, IR, what the competition committee may need to, either
clarify it a little bit,
or just do something more administratively or whatever. Yeah. But again, I'm sure they dotted their I's and crossed their T's, but the optics of it, as I keep going back to that and how it looked, it didn't look good.
No,
but teams do that crap all the time. I mean, I think a lot of other teams were doing that because they're like, hey, it's Aaron Rodgers. If we have even a 0.00001% of claiming him, let's get his ass. But yeah, that's essentially what it was.
I don't know why they had to do that though, because he shows up for all the games. He shows up for all the games anyway. So why can't Hundley play and he'll be the backup? Like, I mean, honestly, like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't speak to that for sure. Really I hear what you're saying.
What did they gain out of that other than just some bad publicity and potentially some?
I think there's probably language in the NFL contract, something that, where, I don't know exactly, this is my own theory. I hear exactly what you're saying. It makes sense. But in terms of where he's at with in respect to his contract and the offseason and all that, it's like risk reward. That guy's about to become the highest paid player in the league. Mm-hmm. They have a thrown away season. Mm-hmm. He probably is injured. It may not. And what I'm getting at is he might be as injured as players normally are that would go on IR.
Well, sure.
But they'll still put him there. So you're not going to take a guy who could make $30 million a year and is obviously your franchise. He's beyond that. I mean, he is like the linchpin to everything, He
is the MVP.
So they're not going to, it's risk reward.
Yeah.
And I will not fault him for that. I mean, but on the surface, outside looking in from other teams, I can definitely see that. But it was absolutely like I saw some people saying, "Don't shut up," and I'm like, "You're insane if you don't think it's the right move. If it didn't look good, that's one thing, but good Lord." So,
yeah, and I guess that kind of segues into your last thing about Belichick. I totally agree. He's constantly making little tweaks around the edges.
Yeah, and this savvy veteran that he scooped up, do you know who it is?
Yeah,
James Harrison, who was a lifetime Steeler, basically. Yeah. He did get cut a couple years ago. Now, he's 39 years old. He's one of the oldest defensive players in the league. I don't know if you've seen this guy. He looks like Mr. T.
But he wants to be in a Super Bowl.
That, and apparently other things are coming out, too, that he wanted out of the Steelers for whatever reason. So he was becoming some kind of like distraction. But again, people look at Belichick and they go, oh, this, that, or the other. And, it's kind of devious. And it's not. And I'm like, to hell with that.
Yeah, he's the best coach that's probably ever coached the game.
Scoreboard is what I say. And while you're sitting here pissing and moaning, he's winning games, Right. And I would think some people say, did you pick him up to pick his brain and just find out more about the Steelers? Because I don't think he's going to play a lot.
Right.
But
so what?
Here's what I'm kind of getting at, though. No, exactly. But here's what I'm kind of getting at. Belichick is smart enough to know that there's value in even having him there to game plan and learn about a guy who was very good at his position.
Yeah.
To learn by osmosis, almost in a way, and soak up knowledge from this guy. And this is like the most un-Ted move ever. You will never see Ted do this.
Right.
So.
And I mean, the salary cap is the same for everybody. And
it's going up a lot. I posted something actually on the Absolute Packer podcast Facebook page. That was a very good read by, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is a good segue. Tom Silverstein, who's a writer for, I have to credit him for this, obviously. He's a writer for the Packers News, formerly JS Online, but now with Packers News, Gannett. And he made a really good observation I didn't think a whole lot of, that, the salary cap has increased like by over $20 million over the past 5 years.
It's crazy, yeah.
And I mean, while it's crazy, it's also, it's basically incentivizing people to make more transactions with free agents, because if you make a huge mistake, it's not going to kill your cap. That was kind of the part of the gist of the article. Obviously, there was a lot more to it, but I read the whole thing and I'm going, this is a really interesting thing. And it's where I'm kind of going with this is, Capers, the game has almost kind of seemed to pass him by. He's becoming a dinosaur, and his scheme is outdated, and it's been figured out because of the modern NFL. Is kind of where I'm going, right? Mm-hmm. And in a way, Ted's philosophy is the same way. He's being slow to adapt. That I get draft and develop. You want the core of your players to be draft and develop, yes, but he carries over cap in this.
Yeah, if you have a key player get injured, you need to be able to replace him.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you talk about the scheme, and this actually goes back to Capers. And Aaron Nagler talked about this. He's with Packers News too, and it's really an astute observation too, but it makes total sense, So they have all these sub packages, right? They go, a few years ago, they had something called NASCAR, which is like some hybrid 4-3 defense instead of 3-4. Mm-hmm. And then this year they have this damn Nitro package. And they have all these cute, fancy little names for these. But what they are is they are player-centric packages, right? Which on the surface you go, okay, it's going to take this guy's strengths and help the team. The problem is injuries. Yeah. When this player gets hurt, there isn't another guy who can go in and play the Nitro package. So the whole shit thing falls apart.
Done. Yeah.
It's just stupid.
Yeah. Wow. Defensively, I feel like they actually played all right this last week, but
they played. The defense didn't lose that Viking game.
Yeah, but almost like outside of that, in a way, over the season, I feel like the defense has actually kind of improved. But overall, if you just look at it holistically, they look way too often like they don't know what the hell's going on.
It's insane. In the APP fifth quarter, the Facebook live Facebook thing, I made a note that says, I don't know how many times you see them line up with only 10 guys on the field. Then you see them line up with 12 guys on the field. I'm like, why don't you meet somewhere in the middle and get 11 out there? It's ridiculous. It's just, no more comments on that. It's a clown car. It's like Benny Hill theme in real life.
Yeah.
So.
And you know what? And I know we will talk more about this. I don't know if we're going to feel like doing any more of these in the off season, but if we do, I'm sure we're going to talk about that a lot. About what coaching changes should happen. What if? I
think the key distinction is what should versus what will.
Well,
that's the ultimate thing. But no doubt.
Which is really tough. Yeah.
Actually, it's segueing a little bit. So I'm going to put a little teaser out there. And you're aware of this, but we're going to, in the next week or so, we're going to have an interview with a special guest, and it will be football related, but it won't be what people think. So I'm going to leave it at that. And it's going to be pretty cool. So just wanted to kind of put that teaser out there. I know we haven't had a lot of interviews or a lot of voicemails and whatnot, but this will be fun. So,
do we know for sure it's going to be next week?
It will be. I don't know the exact day, but I could talk to said interviewee, and he said he's good with that. So,
do you want to do that separate from the Detroit recap?
I think we probably should. Yeah, and then we can pop it in there. Okay. He had made a note real quick. I didn't want to. We don't have to talk about this too much on the podcast, but he wanted me to call and kind of go through some of the just general kind of plans of how the interview would go or whatever. So I could talk to him, or you and I could both talk to him. But it should be cool. Very cool. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for that. I think that'll be killer.
No doubt. So, that's what I got, baby.
That's all I got. Anybody with any comments, call in 508-535-5468. Feel free to, especially once we announce who our guest is, maybe we can have people drop some questions for him. So,
no doubt.
All right. Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go. See ya.
Podcast.
Cheers.
I know, right?